thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here for this occasion. And I also am one of the people who read the book all through, and enormously enjoyed it, not only because of the quality of the individual contributions, but also, I think, because of the originality and the boldness of the whole enterprise. I found it extremely interesting. I think also this is a very auspicious time to have this launch because, as John Daldin has just said, we are at this time marking the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate. Now, just to explain that for those who might not know, Nostra Aetate was a document of the Catholic Church published in 1965 during the Second Vatican Council, and was a groundbreaking document because for the first time the Catholic Church produced a document and made a statement about other religions. What also was particularly important was it spoke about other religions not in adversarial terms, but in terms of the connectedness between religions. And that's something I want to stress, the importance for us and for our world to develop mindsets that are not adversarial, but are prepared to think in terms of commonality and are prepared to draw on the truths of our own religion. For example, the positive things said in the Quran about the people of the book and how they should be protected, to draw on the resources within our own religion to actually have an inclusive attitude that enable us and empower us to have an inclusive attitude towards people of other religions. Because frankly, if we don't do that, the world hasn't got a future. It hasn't got a future. That's what's got to happen. There isn't another way forward for the Middle East, for North Africa, for everywhere else. Nostra Aetate, the document, as well as opening up our relations with other religions, did say it spoke most about the Jews for various reasons. It was just after the Holocaust, for all sorts of other reasons which are not relevant to this particular gathering. With regard to the Muslims, it affirmed that Muslims, like Christians, worship the one God and acknowledge Abraham as their father. So that was, if you like, the inclusive framework of Nostra Aetate. And also, and that was the beginning of a process of reflection in which the Church, and particularly Pope John Paul II, developed, I feel like, a more inclusive attitude towards other religions and saw the Spirit of God acknowledged, and this was a new thing for the Catholic Church, as being active and present and operative in other religions too. I mean, you could read that into certain things that were said and certain practices prior to the Second Vatican Council, but it was said explicitly. In other words, so there is a developed theological framework for interreligious relations, although it must be said the Catholic Church does continue to see itself and understand itself as the source and the steward of the fullness of God's gift to the world for life and for mission. I think it's another interesting thing about this initiative is that relations between monks and people of other religions go back well before the Council. In fact, monks have always been trailblazers. We think of people like Thomas Merton, people like Bede Griffiths, Henri Lassault, who went to India and did this very bold enterprise of trying to explore their Christian spirituality within the culture and within the language of another religion. Very sort of thing that kind of you were referring to. And that, I think, is a very important was a very important development. So there was previous, before the Council, and in a certain sense, this initiative, which I'd heard about, I'd read about this in the tablet, but it's the first time I'd actually read any of the documents. It was actually building on something that's happened before. And as I say, I think it's a bold initiative because if you think of a Benedictine monastery, and I've visited several, and you think of a local Muslim community, they're two very different animals. But nothing's achieved if we're not bold, and that this is certainly bold. One point I'd like to make is that one of the things that Pope John Paul talked about a lot when he was talking about other religions was the unity of the human family, the unity of the human community. There's a wonderful theologian called Henri de Lubac, a Frenchman, who wrote a book called Catholicism, which I think is a brilliant book and basic to Vatican II, in which he talks about the unity of the human community. Pope John Paul brought together people from other religions in Assisi in 1986. I was working in Rome at the time. And he did this because, given what the Council said, he felt it fell to him as Pope to bring people of faith together. Because, as I said a moment ago, that needs to happen. We need to create a shared vision and a sense of interconnectedness and not an adversarial tendency. And as a kind of way of doing that, he drew together people from different religions in Assisi to witness to peace and to pray. They didn't actually pray together all together. The Christians did. But it was a place of prayer. There was space for people to pray in their own way. And reflecting on this experience afterwards of bringing people together, because John Paul II, you must remember, was the first kind of global pope. I had the privilege to work with him fairly closely at times. And he had a very strong sense of his global responsibility. And people were quite happy to obey his call and to come together. And it was something he was very comfortable with exercising. And he was reflecting on this day in Assisi, and he says, on that day, and in the prayer, which was its motivation and its entire content, there seemed for a moment to be even a visible expression of the hidden but radical unity which the divine word, in whom everything was created and in whom everything exists, has established among the men and women of this world. This includes both those who now share together the anxieties and the joys of this portion of the 20th century, and those who have gone before us in history, and also those who will take our places until the Lord comes. In fact, the fact that we came together in Assisi to pray, to fast, and to walk in silence, and this in support of the peace which is always fragile and threatened, perhaps today more than ever, has been, as it were, a clear sign of the profound unity of those who seek in religion spiritual and transcendent values that respond to the great questions of the human heart, despite concrete divisions. So this crucial question, what are the fundamental values that we share and that we must announce together? That is, what is the language that we can use to speak together about people, to try and overcome this perception that people have, that a ridiculous perception that religion causes wars. As if you took religion out, the whole world would all be holding hands and to get together. I think that's slightly improbable. And you couldn't factor out religion anyway, because there always has been religion, always will be. So the thing is, this is an attempt in this book to come together physically, being together, but also to create community, to create some kind of community across divisions, but also to think in terms of the community of the world. And that I think is one of the great messages of it. There may be, I don't know, but a certain affinity between Shia Muslims and Catholics. I don't have sufficient experience. I have had some experience of dialogue. Pope Benedict, after the Common Word initiative, set up a Catholic-Muslim dialogue, and I went to one in Jordan. And I'll just give you an example of the kind of issues that come up. Somebody raised the question, a Catholic, of religious freedom. And obviously they were thinking the situation in Saudi Arabia when there are great restrictions on Christians and Christians' activities. And he was talking about the importance of religious freedom, it being a matter of personal choice. And some of the Muslim contributors had great difficulty with this idea. Because whereas the Catholic speaker was kind of suggesting that it's our personal choices that give us our identity, the Muslim speaker was saying it's what we belong to that gives us identity. And he had great difficulty with the idea that you could acquiesce in your niece or your sister joining a religion which you don't think is the true one. And what I thought was extremely interesting about that, there were two worldviews which each had their own integrity, but were quite different. But I think it's the sort of the interaction. The fact that they're quite different doesn't mean there can't be a deeper synthesis, a deeper mutual understanding, because the whole Catholic doctrine about religious freedom isn't really about personal choice. It's about about there should be no coercion in relation to religion. But that's the kind of thing that we need to talk about. And I think this is a very important book and useful book because it starts, nothing is too small. The friendship between Father Cotton and Dr. Shamali was, one moment of sharing, of trust, of confidence, of mutuality. And I think what we have to do in our own ways, and I yap about these things a lot, is to try to create the mindset that's open to that and also to actually do it. And already in this evening, just coming here and meeting people, meeting Muslim friends for the first time, is a moment in that. And I think the important thing is to grasp the opportunities. We don't, for example, have my colleague, the bishop who's responsible for interfaith dialogue in the United States, they have two big, professional dialogues about academics. We simply don't have the resources in terms of finance or personnel to do that. What we do is take the opportunity to relate, to build relationships, and this is an opportunity. So congratulations on this book. And I think hope that the seed sown will continue. And if you haven't read it, do read it. Let me just put in a plug for two other books, if I may. If you're interested in Catholic teaching on these things, there's a volume called The Gift of Dialogue, published by the Catholic Truth Society, which contains the Nostra Aetate document and two other documents, plus an introduction by me, which is, well, I don't get any royalties, I assure you. But the Gift of Dialogue. And the other is a book we produced in 2010, the Bishops' Conference of England and Wales, called Meeting God in Friend and Stranger. And the title of that suggests what the agenda is: someone who presents as a stranger because of race, the way they dress, their religion, doesn't have to remain a stranger. We've all had the experience, haven't we, of meeting someone, I'm not sure about it, I'm not sure about that, and then as you get to know them, you discover you're delighted that you know the person may become a friend. It's that kind. That's the analogy of the process of coming to a new kind of relationship with people of other religions. So congratulations, well done, and thank you.
Thank you.